George Lyon, Liberal Democrat MEP for Scotland. The European Environment Agency publishing its annual bathing water quality report. 2 beaches in Scotland failing this time. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think I'm really surprised actually that it's only 2 after the very, very wet summer we had last year, where I would have expected there might have been more actually failed because it's very much weather related. That's an improvement in last year where there was 4 failures, so we're making progress clearly, and against the background of one of the wettest summers, I think that is actually quite a good news story.
But for those 2 beaches that have failed, I mean, what is the impact when people are looking, for example, at which beaches to visit? Is there a tourism impact, do you think?
Absolutely. I think people take notice of that, and therefore it does have an impact on their decision as to which beach they might want to go or which town they might want to visit. I mean, take the Heads of Ayr, for instance, where Ayr is quite a tourist area. It was passed last year, but the year before it actually failed, so it's now come back in again. And of course that sends out quite negative signals. It's clearly up to everyone to try and make sure that we get to a position where no beach fails in any year whatsoever. It's a tall order, but it looks as if we're at least moving in the right direction.
And so what kind of progress has been made? What kind of concrete steps are being taken on the ground? And therefore, what more needs to be done to make sure that no beaches in Scotland fail?
Well, certainly in some of the beaches, it's to do with Scottish Water and the investment in water treatment plants, the amount of discharges coming out these plants and how well controlled they are. So there has been substantial investment in Scotland through Scottish Water to try and upgrade all of the treatment plants in Scotland and make sure that we cut down the amount of sewage, raw sewage that's discharged into the sea, and that does seem to be working. In other areas it's agricultural runoff, and I know the area where I lived and farmed in the island of Bute at Ettrick Bay, for a long number of years it was continually failing. There was about £3 million invested in there to provide extra housing, better runoff, more control over when slurry was actually spread onto the land, and that did help. But one of the challenges you always face, that even with cattle outdoors, if you get a long dry period, then a huge downpour, say an inch or 2 inches of rain in 24 hours, most of that manure then gets washed off and down into the ditches and ends up in the beaches. So it's, although you might have spent a lot of money, it doesn't always guarantee success at the end of the day. The other thing they did with Ettrick Bay, of course, they put in a monitoring system whereby it warns bathers if there's a risk, if there's a high risk on any particular day. So it means then that not only have you got the guarantee of all the measures that have been taken to try and prevent it, there is still in place there a warning system that says to bathers, actually on this particular day, because of the weather conditions, it is a high risk and therefore you're recommended not to bathe in it. So huge amounts of investment in public water treatment supplies, and indeed trying to help the private sector and agricultural industry deal with this problem as well, is the way to try and solve the problem.
And to what extent do you think that having these European rules and the fact that the authorities in Scotland know that the European Environment Agency is going to be checking up on this, to what extent has that made a difference, do you think?
Well, if there's no European rules, no one would bother. And therefore the huge investment there's been in cleaning up our beaches and cleaning up our water courses is now paying off. And I think that from the general public's point of view, that's to be welcomed. It means you can go swimming, canoeing, sailing in the waters knowing that you're not at risk of actually disease from falling overboard or swimming in the water indeed. So I think without the European regulations being in place, our beaches would be much dirtier, less friendly to bathers and those who use the water as a recreational area.